The Celestial War Academy was known across the galaxy as the Crucible of Strategists. It produced the greatest military minds in the known universe. Kings, conquerors, and warlords, every single one had been trained within its halls. Only the best were allowed to attend. Only the most brilliant survived its trials. And yet, standing among the towering reptilian Zorak, the multi-limbed Kaziri, and the crystalline Valethian tacticians, was something completely unexpected. A human. A Deathworlder. And no one was prepared for what that meant. Arrival at the Academy. Nathaniel Carter stepped off the transport shuttle, adjusting the straps of his EarthGov cadet uniform. He felt the weight of thousands of alien eyes on him. The Celestial War Academy was a vast, ancient structure. Hovering platforms, energy-forged citadels, and battle simulations so advanced they were nearly indistinguishable from reality. This was where the galaxy's greatest warlords were forged. And yet, among the elite of the elite, Carter stood alone as the first and only human ever accepted. A Zorak commander, his red-scaled body adorned with ceremonial war armor, sneered at him. "You do not belong here, human." Nathaniel smiled. "Give it a week. You might change your mind." The Zorak let out a hissing laugh. "You are not a warrior species. You do not understand war. You humans are nothing but fragile anomalies in the grand scheme of the cosmos." Nathaniel tilted his head. "Funny. We humans used to think the same thing, about ourselves. Then we found out what we were really capable of." The Kaziri, an insectoid strategist known for their hive mind battle formations, buzzed their wings in amusement. "We shall see if your species possesses true tactical intelligence, or if you are merely an oddity." Nathaniel smirked. "Guess we'll find out." The impossible exam. On the first day, the students were led to the war simulator chamber, a vast room filled with holographic battlefields, designed to test the sharpest minds the galaxy had ever produced. Grand Marshal Zyver, a towering Valethian whose crystalline body pulsed with cold blue light, addressed the class. "You are all here because you represent the finest military minds of your respective species. But understand this academy does not tolerate mediocrity. Fail and you will be expelled. Succeed, and you may one day command entire fleets." The aliens stood at attention, their postures rigid with discipline. Nathaniel? He just crossed his arms and waited. Zyver's gaze flickered toward him for the briefest second before continuing. "Your first challenge is simple." The lights dimmed, and the chamber was suddenly filled with a massive war simulation. A planetary conflict. Two opposing factions were poised for war. Fleets hovered in high orbit, ground forces stood on the brink of battle, and diplomatic channels had completely collapsed. The students were given one objective: end the war as swiftly as possible. The room erupted into strategic chaos. Aliens overthink. The human ends it. The Kaziri strategists immediately began analyzing battle formations, calculating unit movements, and predicting enemy troop deployments using advanced hive mind calculations. The Zorak warlords debated whether to launch a full planetary invasion or establish a war of attrition to wear down the enemy. The Valethian tacticians meticulously planned diplomatic sabotage and long-term disruption strategies, ensuring that their enemies would be destabilized for generations. Nathaniel? He did something different. He didn't plan a battle. He prevented it. His fingers danced across the hollow interface as he accessed both warring factions' communication channels. In 10 minutes he had completely dismantled the war. When the Grand Marshal checked the results, his crystalline eyes flashed in disbelief. "Cadet Carter, the war never even began." Nathaniel grinned. "Exactly." The entire class stared at him in stunned silence. "Breaking the game." The Zorak commander hissed in frustration. "You cheated. This was a war simulation. You were supposed to plan for battle." Nathaniel shrugged. "I did. I just found a way to win without fighting." The Kaziri Swarm Queen observed the data. "Impossible. You manipulated the factions into resolving their conflict peacefully, without a single drop of bloodshed, through nothing but deception and psychological warfare." Nathaniel's smirk grew wider. "I thought this was a test to end a war, not to fight one." Grand Marshal Zyver stepped forward, his crystalline form radiating intrigue. "Explain." Nathaniel leaned against the control panel. "War is expensive. War is messy. War takes time. You guys are so used to fighting like this is some grand game of honor and tactics. But humans? We cheat." The room fell silent. Nathaniel continued. "I infiltrated both factions' data networks and exposed fabricated war crimes that their own leaders were using to justify the conflict. Then I altered their communication signals to make them think their generals had already brokered a peace deal. Within minutes, both sides stood down because they believed they had already won. He grinned. That's how humans fight. We don't waste resources on pointless bloodshed. We go straight for the checkmate. The galaxy wasn't ready. Grand Marshal Zyver remained still, his crystalline body shimmering as he processed what had just happened. The other alien cadets were visibly shaken. They had spent their entire lives studying war, believing that the greatest minds were those who could wage it most efficiently. But this human, he had just broken the game. The Zorak commander clenched his fists. That is dishonorable. You avoided the battlefield. Nathaniel gave him a flat look. So, if the war ends? The aftermath of Nathaniel Carter's victory without a battle sent shockwaves through the Celestial War Academy. The alien cadets, trained in the sacred traditions of war, were left stunned, frustrated, or awed. But one thing was certain: the galaxy had never encountered a species like humanity, and some of them were not happy about it. The backlash begins. 3 days after the war simulation incident, Nathaniel walked into the Academy's vast tactical analysis hall. It was a towering chamber of glowing holograms, displaying historical battles from across the galaxy. Alien cadets gathered around floating platforms, analyzing centuries of warfare, refining their strategic brilliance. As soon as he stepped inside, the room fell silent. Every pair of alien eyes turned toward him, some curious, some hostile, some downright confused. Then, from across the hall, a Zorak cadet slammed his fist against the table. The human is an insult to our traditions. The reptilian warborn bellowed. Nathaniel raised an eyebrow. Good morning to you too. The Zorak stalked forward, his muscular frame towering over Nathaniel. His golden combat plating gleamed under the Academy's artificial sunlight. The purpose of war is to test strength. Honor. Power, he growled. Yet you treat it as nothing more than a puzzle to be solved. Nathaniel sighed, crossing his arms. War is a puzzle. And the best solution is the one that doesn't get thousands of people killed. The Zorak's eyes burned with fury. You do not understand battle, human. You are a coward. A murmur of agreement rippled through the hall. Nathaniel met the Zorak's glare and smirked. I'm a coward? Funny, because if I remember correctly, I beat you in under 10 minutes. The Zorak lunged forward, but before he could even lay a claw on Nathaniel, a deep voice echoed through the hall. Enough. The room froze. Standing at the entrance was Grand Marshal Zyver. The crystalline being's form shimmered with ancient authority as he stepped forward. His glowing blue eyes locked onto the furious Zorak cadet. If you wish to challenge the human, do it through intellect, not emotion. The Zorak hesitated, his claws twitching in barely controlled rage. Then with a growl he stepped back. Zyver's gaze flickered toward Nathaniel. You have shaken the foundation of our teachings, human. Now you must prove whether your methods hold true under pressure. Nathaniel grinned. Sounds fun. The next test, the battlefield of the mind. The cadets were gathered in the Academy's deep simulation chamber, a massive coliseum filled with war table holograms. Today's challenge was not about commanding fleets or armies. It was about facing the greatest strategists in the galaxy, alone. The challenge? Nathaniel would go head-to-head against 3 of the Academy's top cadets, each one a master of their species' unique military doctrines. He had 1 hour to outmaneuver them. The opponents stepped forward. 1. Kaziri Swarm Commander Ziwelovekt, whose hive mind calculations could predict enemy movements with chilling precision. 2. Zorak Warlord Krognor, who had memorized over 5,000 battle formations. 3. Valethian High Tactician Solara, a crystalline strategist who specialized in long-term war simulations spanning decades. Nathaniel? He had a human brain and some caffeine. The timer began. The war of the mind had begun. How to break an alien strategist. Within the first 10 minutes, Nathaniel had already caused chaos. Ziwelovekt's hive mind formations relied on highly efficient, synchronized troop movements. So Nathaniel intentionally disrupted their data feeds, making them receive conflicting battlefield reports. Suddenly, their perfect battle lines were a tangled mess of confusion. Next, Krognor's Zorak formations were powerful but rigid, designed for predictable, symmetrical warfare. So Nathaniel threw unpredictability at them. He sent fake attack signals, misleading troop placements, and deliberately false weaknesses. Krognor kept falling for traps that didn't exist. And Solara? She was planning for a long drawn-out war. Nathaniel ended it in 20 minutes. He targeted key resource points, shut down communications, and made both of her simulated factions think they had already lost. It was absolute domination. By the time the clock hit the hour mark, Nathaniel stood victorious. Again, the Academy was in shock. The aftermath, humanity the great disruptor. Silence filled the chamber. Grand Marshal Zyver stepped forward. His glowing gaze swept across the room before settling on Nathaniel. You have proven something today, Cadet Carter? Nathaniel tilted his head. Oh, and what's that? Zyver's voice was calm, yet heavy with meaning. The galaxy has underestimated humanity. A ripple of realization spread through the gathered cadets. They had spent centuries refining their strategies, believing themselves to be the pinnacle of tactical brilliance. And then a single human had walked in and broken everything. The Zorak warlord Krognor stepped forward, his expression one of grim acceptance. You do not fight like us. You do not think like us. But I cannot deny your results. Nathaniel smirked. Thanks. That means a lot, buddy. Krognor grumbled, crossing his arms. We are not buddies. The Kaziri swarm commander Zielelvekt simply bowed his head. Your methods are intriguing, human. Even Solara, the cold and calculating Velithian tactician, seemed deep in thought. Nathaniel stretched. Well, this was fun. What's next? Zyver's crystalline body pulsed with a new emotion. Your final challenge, human? Nathaniel blinked. Final? Already? Zyver's voice darkened. This academy was built to prepare leaders for real war. But now, there are those in the galaxy who see your kind as a threat. Nathaniel's smirk faded. Meaning? Zyver's eyes burned. Your next test will not be a simulation. The galaxy is watching. And some will do anything to see you fail. The room tensed. Nathaniel exhaled. Great. Real stakes this time. His grin returned. I love a challenge. Nathaniel Carter had shattered the expectations of the Celestial War Academy. He had beaten their best strategists, outmaneuvered their top tacticians, and exposed just how rigid their view of warfare had become. And now the Academy was about to throw him into a real war. Not a simulation. Not a test. A live battlefield. Because out there, beyond the walls of the Academy, someone had been watching. And they weren't happy. The enemy that feared humanity. The Zelthar Dominion had ruled its region of space for nearly 2,000 years. They were brutal. Unyielding. Merciless. Entire planets had fallen before their might. Their fleets were indomitable, their armies unstoppable, their conquests unquestioned. But for the first time in their history they felt fear. Fear of a species that had never been considered a threat. Fear of humans. News of Nathaniel Carter's tactical disruptions had reached the Zelthar warlords, and they had come to a terrifying realization. Humans didn't fight wars. They prevented them. They dismantled them. They broke the game before it even began. And that made them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. So they made a decision. Nathaniel Carter had to be eliminated. And the War Academy? It was about to become a battlefield. The invasion begins. Nathaniel was in his quarters, studying the tactical breakdown of the latest strategy course when the alarms blared. Alert. Unauthorized vessels detected. Warning. Planetary shield breach. He froze. Then he ran. The Academy's halls were chaos. Alien cadets, many of whom had spent their entire lives in theoretical war exercises, were suddenly faced with a real enemy. Explosions rocked the citadel. Zelthar dropships were pouring into the Academy, unleashing waves of armored soldiers. Nathaniel reached the Grand Tactical Hall, where several cadets and instructors were gathered around a massive holographic display. Grand Marshal Zyver turned to face him, his crystalline body crackling with tension. Carter. Nathaniel exhaled. I take it this isn't another test? Zyver's eyes burned. No. This is war. A broken defense. The Academy's defense systems had never been designed to withstand an actual invasion. They had training fleets, not war fleets. They had theoretical battle formations, not real combat experience. And the Zelthar? They had come for one thing. Nathaniel. As the holographic display updated with live battle data, Nathaniel analyzed the situation. The outer defenses were already failing. The planetary shield had been breached. The enemy's advance was too fast. They weren't here for conquest. This was a targeted strike. Nathaniel gritted his teeth. This wasn't a war. This was an assassination. The humans' plan. The alien cadets argued in frantic voices. We must counterattack. No, we must hold our position. We must request aid. Nathaniel slammed his hand on the war table. You're thinking like generals again. Stop. Think like me. The room went silent. He pointed at the map. They didn't come to conquer. They came to kill one person, me. That means we have an advantage. The Khazari commander buzzed nervously. An advantage? How? Nathaniel smirked. Because they think I'm an easy target. The Zorak warlord rumbled. You propose we make them believe they've succeeded? Nathaniel nodded. We make them overcommit. We let them think they have me, then we turn their trap against them. The bait and the kill. The plan was simple and insane. Nathaniel would allow himself to be captured. The Zelthar would lower their guard, believing their mission was complete. Then the cadets, who had finally begun to think the way Nathaniel did, would turn the entire academy into a death trap. It was a gamble. If it failed, Nathaniel would be dead. But if it worked, the Zelthar would regret ever underestimating humanity. The final moments. The Zelthar stormed the war hall, their elite soldiers cutting through the final defenses. And there, standing in the center of the chamber, was Nathaniel Carter. Unarmed. Come. Waiting. A Zelthar warlord stepped forward, his black armor gleaming under the dim emergency lights. Human, he hissed. Your mind is a disease. And we are the cure. Nathaniel smiled. You sure about that? The warlord hesitated. Something was wrong. Then, the entire academy came alive. Energy barriers slammed shut. Explosives detonated in controlled bursts. Hacked security systems turned against the invaders. The Zelthar realized too late. They weren't hunting a helpless human. They had walked into their own grave. Nathaniel tilted his head. You guys really don't know how humans fight, do you? The trap was sprung. And the Zelthar invasion force was doomed. The Zelthar had come to erase a threat. They had come with overwhelming firepower, elite soldiers, and a singular objective, to kill Nathaniel Carter. But they had made one critical mistake. They had thought they were smarter than a human. And now, they were about to learn just how dangerous a cornered species could be. The trap springs shut. The moment the Zelthar commander realized what was happening, it was already too late. The entire academy had turned into a weapon. Automated turrets, once disabled for training purposes, roared to life, shredding Zelthar soldiers in a hail of plasma fire. Hallway barricades, designed as part of tactical exercises, sealed shut, trapping entire squads in kill zones. Power conduits overloaded, frying enemy systems and causing controlled explosions that tore through their ranks. Nathaniel stood at the center of it all, watching the chaos unfold. The Zelthar had come expecting a war. What they got was an execution. War is a puzzle, and they lost. The Academy's cadets, once divided in their beliefs about human tactics, now fought with a new understanding. They didn't engage in honorable duels. They didn't fight in grand, pre-planned formations. They adapted. They improvised. They fought like humans. A Khazari swarm commander redirected enemy comms, feeding them false intelligence that sent squads into ambushes. A Zorak warlord, once obsessed with symmetrical battles, now set up irregular asymmetric engagements that confused and slaughtered the invaders. Even the Valethian strategist, a species known for their long-term war planning, abandoned the idea of a slow conflict and used rapid, brutal tactics to overwhelm the enemy. The Zelthar, so used to predictable wars, were utterly unprepared. They had stepped into a new kind of battlefield, one where humanity reigned supreme. The last stand of the Zelthar commander. The Zelthar warlord, the architect of the assassination, stood in the ruined war hall. His forces were annihilated. His mission was a failure. And standing before him, completely unharmed, was Nathaniel Carter. The warlord's mandibles twitched in fury. You fight without honor, human? Nathaniel chuckled. And you're dead because of it. The warlord lunged, drawing a plasma blade. Nathaniel sidestepped the strike effortlessly, twisting his opponent's momentum against him. In one fluid motion, he grabbed the warlord's own sidearm, pressed it against his chest, and pulled the trigger. A bolt of energy ripped through the warlord's body. The Zelthar staggered, his glowing eyes wide with disbelief. Nathaniel stepped back, watching him collapse. Wars aren't about honor, he said simply. They're about winning. The warlord shuddered one last time, then died. The aftermath, humanity is no longer ignored. The battle was over. The academy, though damaged, had survived. The cadets, once skeptical of human tactics, now stood in awe. And the galaxy? It would never underestimate humanity again. Nathaniel stood at the war hall's shattered entrance, looking up at the sky as the last remnants of the Zelthar fleet fled in disgrace. Grand Marshal Zyver stepped beside him. "You have changed us, Carter?" Nathaniel smirked. "Good. The galaxy needs a wake-up call." Zyver's glowing eyes dimmed in thought. "What will you do now?" Nathaniel exhaled. "This war isn't over. The Zelthar won't forget this. They'll be back." Zyver nodded. "Then we will be ready." Nathaniel grinned. "No. Next time we won't wait for them to come to us." The human era of warfare had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to The Void Narratives for more epic sci-fi stories. Rocket.